Hi, my name is Miguel Monteverde, and I am a volunteer at the National Museum of the United States Army. Well, it's really the most natural extension of my lifelong vocation. I wanted to be a soldier from a very early age, and I think I was propelled into that by history. I really, really wanted to be where I saw history being made. And as a consequence of that, from sixth grade on at St. Catherine's Military School in Anaheim, California, to St. Thomas Military Academy in St. Paul, Minnesota, to the Virginia Military Institute here in Virginia, I followed that track and was deeply immersed in all things Army and military history all that time. So when I retired from the Army, and I actually retired twice because I was a Department of the Army civilian after almost 30 years in uniform, it just seemed a normal extension for me to volunteer at the Army Museum. I love telling the Army story. Certainly as a field artilleryman, the Napoleon 12 pounder in preserving the nation resonates for me. I mean, the fact that that gun tube was actually on Cemetery Ridge at the Battle of Gettysburg makes that whole exhibit, it makes me feel like those guys are my professional ancestors. And I have walked the Gettysburg battlefield many, many times. I've gone from Seminary Ridge to Cemetery Ridge with my son and grandson, or my son and son-in-law. And, you know, I faced down that very gun tube in my imagination. And so that exhibit resonates with me a lot. Well, I think it goes back to telling the Army story, but more than that, as a public affairs officer, I always tried hard to explain to people that the Army is not a monolithic institution. I know we say the Pentagon said today, or the Pentagon announced this, but of course the Pentagon doesn't say anything. It's a building. It's the men and women who wear the uniform of the United States, who are the sons and daughters of our country. And I always wanted to represent the Army with that personal touch. And of course, as you know, that's the whole underpinning behind the Army Museum, to reflect the story of the American soldier. Yes, we have trucks and jeeps and cannons and other things there that help tell that story, but none of those things would have any significance if you didn't have the sons and daughters of America who were part of that story. And so I think I love bringing home the personal touch when visitors come to the museum. That's just important to me, and I think that resonates with them when you can, you know, these are not statues in the park. They are living, breathing men and women who have fought for our country. Oh gosh, every minute that I'm there, from the time I walk along the promenade from the parking lot and look at the bricks of people who are commemorated there. The structure of the museum itself is so handsome and state of the art, and walking into that grand hall with the campaign streamers which was brilliant architecture, I think, because a lot of people don't really know what those campaign streamers are and what they mean. But my whole time in the Army, and again, telling the Army story was to try to decipher for people some of what appear to many as the mysteries of the Army. What are all those ribbons that a soldier wears on their uniform? They're very nicely colored, but do they mean something? And you can start right out in that hall and point out, hey, this yellow, red, and green ribbon that I wore on my uniform, that's the Vietnam campaign ribbon. See it up there in the ceiling? And if you go out on that far wall, you will see all the various campaigns of the Vietnam War there. I love being able to tell those stories, and I think my Army background helps give credibility to some of that. I particularly like Marty Teehan's M1 rifle. I'm sure you're familiar with it because the wonderful story of how it came to the museum after having been lost in a farmer's field in France for 70 some odd years. But that Marty Teehan inscribed his name, carved his name in the butt of in the stock of the rifle, which while wasn't uncommon, it really wasn't an authorized practice. But important to me, and the side you can't see because of where it is in the display, he carved a girl's name, Kitty. Now, we don't know really much about Kitty except his family. Marty's family thinks she was probably a young girl in the English village next to the area where Marty's unit, the 101st or the 82nd Airborne, trained before it went into D-Day. But that resonates with me because when I was about Marty's age and a cadet at the Virginia Military Institute, I had my fiance's name engraved on my cadet saber on the inside. And so I think I understand kind of what motivated Marty to do that, the feelings that you have. And of course he was killed on D-Day. And I don't think Kitty ever really learned what happened to him except that he didn't come home. That's a very poignant story, not because it's so unique, but because it's so common. And to be associated with men and women who are willing to sacrifice so much so that we all can be free, I think that's a wonderful story that I think that people should know about the Army, should know about military service, should know about service to your country. And I guess that's a takeaway that I hope that people would leave the museum feeling very strongly about. Even if you've had no military background, the museum tells such a wonderful story about our country. And, that's a story that we need told and retold, particularly in these turbulent times. And the museum does a wonderful job of doing that. So for sure, it's worth the wait, and I can hardly wait until I get back to work in there.